Hi, I'm Melody Brookman, and this is my podcast on what methods work and what methods don't work on the paranormal. And my special guest tonight is the very famous Barry Conrad, who has documented the San Pedro Haunting. And I'm gonna introduce you to him right now. So, Barry, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Hey, Melody, it's great to be on the show. Well, basically, I'm a paranormal investigator many, many years. I started out as a TV news cameraman back in Cincinnati, Ohio, although I was from Hamilton, not far from there. And I always had an interest in the paranormal. My mother and her girlfriends, I remember, would come over to the farmhouse where we live, and they were messing around with the Ouija board. They were oohing and awing, like, wow. And I'm a kid, I'm like wondering, trying to tune into this. What's going on? What are they so excited about? So I think that planted the germ or the seed that kind of inculcated in myself a desire to learn about the paranormal as I got older. But I didn't really have an experience till actually when I was about 10. I was with my cousin Dale, and we'd heard of this old abandoned house known as the Huber home. It was up the road on River Road near the farmhouse where I lived. They said it was haunted, and the family who had lived there had moved into the other house next door because I guess it was so bad that they were afraid to live there anymore. It was so old. And so my cousin and I remember we walked up this weed strewn front sidewalk. And as we walked up to the front porch, just to kind of check it out, the boards, in the porch floor were so decrepit, rotted, that if you took a step in one way or the other direction, your foot would go right through the wood. It was so rotted. But we still were able to get up to the window, and we looked in the window, and we both looked at each other, and we looked back, and we thought we had just seen a lady in white. And it looked like she was floating like an apparition down the staircase, but it only was just for a couple of seconds. So that is really what began my quest for the paranormal.
Wow, that must have been really scary for you. So, now you documented the really famous case that was televised in the Sci-Fi Channel in 2003, I believe. The that really boosted your career in 2003 on Sci-Fi Channel, and so I'd like to know a little bit about the the case itself.
The time has come to tell the tale.
You're going to see authentic videotape for true haunting, not a reenactment. And during the course of this program, you will meet some fascinating people who claim to have come face to face with ghosts.
The true story of a woman besieged by dark forces beyond this world.
I moved into that house. I thought it was a nice little quaint house. I lived in San Pedro with, I was married at the time, and my husband and we didn't get along, so I moved.
Soon after her separation, she began to sense a presence.
I felt a presence like right away, right when I moved in. I think my ex-husband, we were separated at the time. He came to the house, and for some reason that's when things started happening in front of us.
The attic crawl space would soon become a Pandora's box, unleashing a powerful entity.
I started clicking off some photos. It was dark, totally dark. I fired first, I fired second, and just as I fired into the third frame, something pulled this camera from my hands.
And just got stronger and stronger from there.
When the balls of light were on the ceiling, it was very frightening. I had just woken up from a night's sleep, and I looked up on the ceiling, and there were these lights flying around.
be right about here, which is several inches away from the wall. Therefore, these might be away from the wall. If that's true, there should be some light that's being reflected against the wall, but there's not. Extremely unusual. I can't explain it.
Everyone just left except us in the house. Things are starting to drip out of the cabinets. Nobody believes us, but it's happening, right, Jeff?
It was a fluorescent orange in color, and it was coming out of cabinets. It was coming out of the sink water that I was doing dishes with. It was, and it was in the condensation of the water. The water was coming out oozy.
From enigmatic balls of light to human blood plasma dripping from the house's walls, the entity seemed to intensify its actions.
What's going to happen next? What's it going to do to me? It's getting very hard to even be here. I feel like just packing up the kids and going to Texas right now. I'm really scared.
An unknown encounter, where before long it became a matter of life and death for one skeptical investigator.
What's wrong?
What happened?
Jeff Wheatcraft was physically attacked in this attic on September 4th, 1989 by an invisible force that actually pulled him up onto a nail protruding from a rafter beam and actually tried to strangle him to death.
I don't remember being lifted up there, but I was actually hung. I was hung in an attic.
Jeff, here you go, lady. Here you go. Here you go. What the hell happened? Are you okay, buddy? Oh,
An unknown encounter. A true account of the San Pedro Haunting, hosted by Ferdy Main. Perhaps the most terrifying ghost story ever documented on live video. All the more scarier because it's true.
And I really want to know, tell me about Jackie Hernandez. Now, I want to know what she tried to resolve her issues in this haunting. And did it work? Did it not work? I mean, what was going on here? Can you enlighten me on this, Barry?
Yeah, well, just a little bit. You're right. The San Pedro Haunting investigation, I turned it into a book and a video. And my friend Steve edited the show, and we had a great time putting it all together. But what started was a lady named Jackie Hernandez. We went down to her very haunted house, and we didn't know it was haunted when we first went in there in San Pedro, California, on 11th Street. And what happened was that I had a very skeptical photographer who worked with me at the time named Jeff Wheatcraft. And the very first night that we were in the house, August 8th, 89, it was a very hot, sultry night. Nothing was happening when we got there. We had a few other people that were there as well that were interested in the case. And she had a couple of her friends, and very quiet. And she had mentioned that she not only saw the apparition of an old man, which she described sitting in the bedroom of her children on the lower bunk bed, but she also said one day someone had found, I guess, some money in their attic, so she decided to take a peek into the attic. So she kind of got up on top of the washing machine and put an apple box there or something, and she looked up into this crawl space. And as she looked into the crawl space, she saw what she described as a disembodied head floating towards her, different than the apparition of the old man. Anyway, this case went on, and it really got our attention. And Jeff went the very first night we were there. Someone said, why don't you go up and take a few photographs in the attic? And he did so. And what really was a real scare factor was the fact that someone had told him. Well, he said he yelled out, "Oh, I feel like there's something watching me from behind." So Larry Brooks said to him, "Why don't you go up and take a few pictures over your shoulder?" Mm-hmm. He laughed. He says, "I think all these stories are getting to me now." But he did so. And he was into the third shot. And this is the very first thing that happened. As he was squeezing off the third shot, shooting over his shoulder in a crouched position right above the crawl space entrance, something pulled the camera right from his hands. So now the story got even more dramatic on, a few weeks later, on September 4th. Jeff and Gary, who was a friend of mine from Ohio, went up into the attic. And I'm putting this all into a nutshell because Jackie had called me and she said, "Oh, all hell was breaking loose, and the refrigerator door was opening and closing, and it opened and slammed open at one point, and Pepsi went flying out and hit her in the head, and she was very frightened. So we all happened to be together that night in Studio City, where I had an apartment at that time, and we went down to the to her house rather in the middle of the night. It was like late. It was like 11:30, 12 o'clock at night. And when we got there, it was very quiet. Those guys decided to go up into the attic because Gary Bain was his name. He wanted to see what Jeff was talking about when he said the camera had gotten pulled. So he went up and they were up there for about 10 minutes. And down below, I was speaking with Jackie Hernandez and her girlfriend, Susan Castaneda, who had also witnessed poltergeist type phenomena in the house. And suddenly I felt like I'm being watched to my left when that was nothing more than just an old bathroom. I didn't see anything. And right after that, or shortly after that, I heard what all three of us heard, the snapping, just like three snapping sounds, like if someone,
Huh.
a human being, snapping her fingers 3 times. And something inside me said, "Oh my gosh, I better roll the camera." I had this big Ikigami camera on my shoulder. And as soon as I yelled up that there was something going on down below, Gary had just turned away to see what was going on. I had just started the camera, just get that feeling. As a news guy, you had the feeling that something was going to happen, but you weren't sure. And I just started the camera, and as Gary pulled away from Jeff or moved away from Jeff, Jeff was in the center of the attic. We hear this groan, this horrifying groan coming from where Jeff's position was, like that. Gary turned. I had given Gary a little point and shoot camera with a flash, built-in flash. We had no digital cameras or anything like that at that time. And he actually was using the flash to see where Jeff's position was because Jeff's flashlight hit the floor, went dark, and he got pictures of Jeff hanged by an entity or some force in the attic, not killed. But Gary luckily was up there because he was able to go over and bend this nail down. His neck was tied with an old bowline knot, a clothesline cord rather, around Jeff's neck. And as
Oh,
he pulled it down, he bent it down, Jeff was able to get off, but he still had the cord around his neck. And you can see the footage that I got, and you see Jeff coming down out of the attic. But to
huh.
answer your question about Jackie, you wanted to know what she did. I understand that she tried everything to get rid of this thing. And it became a real problem because it was there and she knew she had to move not long after the hanging incident. And she had a priest in. I wasn't there when that happened. She had the
Okay.
usual, run of the mill ritualistic stuff like sage and holy water and all those kinds of things, which can work, I guess, in certain circumstances. But this case, no, it actually followed her about, I don't know, maybe 150, 200 miles north to a trailer in Weldon. So this thing
Oh,
was
wow.
very, very attached to Jackie.
Okay. So when she used the priest, would you say the activity in heightened, or did it subside for a little bit, or what would you say happened?
Uh, it didn't subside really. It wasn't maybe it would die down for a short period of time, maybe a day or two, but it always would come back. One time it actually hit her in the back. It actually felt like two bony hands pressing into her back, and she was in a lot of pain. I was actually there that night when that happened. I think I have footage of that somewhere. But no,
So it
nothing's.
came back. So
I'm
you
sorry,
you
pardon?
think it came back? So maybe it came back angry that it was trying to be, that something was trying to get rid of it. You would say.
It's possible. It's very possible. But I know one thing: it did follow Jackie up to Weldon. But with Jeff, I think he was a catalyst because the hanging happened on September 4th, '89,
Uh-huh.
and he seemed to be a target. And it wasn't until we went up to Weldon and someone said, "Oh, it's coming through this Ouija board," or Jackie said it was spelling out answers on a planchette on a Ouija board by itself. So Jeff went up there with me. He never went back to the house. in San Pedro. Thank God, because that's where he got head hanging. But this is like 5 months down the road in the year in 1990, in April 1990. And we went down there, and literally the planchette started spelling out everything, answering all of our questions. We asked it, are you a spirit? It says, yes, make no mistake. I was murdered. I was held underwater, Pedro Bay. And I asked it, if you're a spirit, well, how many ghosts are around us now? And it said phantoms fill the skies around you, something to that effect. So no, it followed Jackie all the way up there, and so she had to move several times before it finally subsided. But it was a real hard thing for her. I really felt bad for her because it was a real trauma.
So
At the time, I didn't know that ghosts followed anyone at that time.
right. So when she tried the sage, would you say it was angry even more with the sage, or did it subside and then it came back angrily, or what happened with the sage?
It really didn't do anything that angry, except for what, as I mentioned, that it pushed her on the back, which is also what it did with Jeff when he was coming down out of the attic the first night that we were there. It put a tremendous amount of pressure on his lower back. He said it felt like it was a large bony hand pressing into his back. He had to go see a chiropractor after that. But no, this did not solve the problem for Jackie whatsoever. There was a lot of poltergeist type activity, like lamps would fly off tables
Mhm.
and different things like that would happen, knocks on the wall. And then one night, about, I would say a few nights just before the hanging incident happened, there was a liquid substance that came out of the walls. And that was terrifying in its own right, which turned out to be human blood plasma with a heavy copper and iodine content.
Yeah, a haunting went back to the property after a while.
The original house, you mean?
Yes. Do you think it was like do you think do you think it was do you think this the human spirit was attached to the property, and at some sort of time it has to go back to that property? Do you think it's a boundary thing for spirits, or what do you think? Why do you think it
Yeah.
went back to the property?
Well, I think that as we found out later on, we found out that the house is even still haunted to this day by the current family it's being rented out to. And the reason I think it went back to property, it has a strong bond to that house for some reason. I'm not sure if it's because it was murdered there. We're not sure, but we did find out through the Ouija board that it did kind of. I was able to verify a lot of stuff through old newspaper files, microfilm at the News Pilot, that there was a person had murdered. He'd been murdered and held underwater in Pedro Bay. And the reason I think it's really attached to that house is because where are we? We're right there on the ocean.
Uh,
The person who, if this is the right person, he was murdered on a lumber steamer called the Astoria. He was held underwater and so forth. So the person could have either lived in the house or perhaps his killer lived in the house. In fact, I think it might have said something to that effect. The reason I think that it's attached to that house is a living spirit. For some reason, it's gotten very powerful. Is the fact that the cord wrapped around Jeff's neck when he got hanged was tied in a very specific knot. None of us knew anything about this kind of a knot called a
right.
bowline. Powline. That's a Siemens knot. So it's
Uh-huh.
something attached to that property. It's associated with that house. I truly believe, or else it wouldn't have gone back to that house.
Okay. And why do you think that the methods that Jackie tried, the sage and maybe the priest blessing the house, why do you think it failed?
Why do I think that failed? Well, I'm not sure. I don't know why that failed. I think that it may work. Those things might work on certain cases, but this was a very powerful entity, and maybe it just it didn't seem like anything worked with that entity. I don't know why exactly it failed, but certainly didn't work in that case.
But it couldn't have been that maybe the priest didn't come by the priest didn't come by enough times to get rid of it, or the priest didn't have the holiness to get rid of it? Is that a factor?
Could
Maybe
have
I
been
don't
either
know.
one. Could have been either one of those things. I don't think that I think there was only, as I recall, there was only one visit by a priest, and I don't believe he
Oh,
stayed.
okay.
And he didn't stay there overnight. He didn't stay there
Mhm.
overnight. And
Okay.
now who that priest was, I believe it was a Catholic priest. I'm not positive,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
I don't know if it had anything to do with his holiness or anything like that. I couldn't tell you that because I wasn't there when that happened. But they, I mean, there was a psychic there. I remember one night a psychic came over and she was espousing
Yeah.
some rituals or something like that. But to me, a lot of that is showmanship. It's not always that effective. I believe there are true psychics out there that can get rid of things, but most of the time it's showmanship, not very
Right.
effective.
Okay. Okay. So do you think one day we'll be able to figure out how to, you know, diminish these negative hauntings and maybe find a way of solving them and having them, you know, cross over and be at peace with these human spirits like in the San Pedro case, or what do you think, Barry?
Yeah, I think that we're at the tip of a very large iceberg as far as knowledge goes
Mhm.
in the paranormal. There's so much that we don't know, and there's not. There aren't a lot of people now that are interested in the subject more than ever before. Probably because there's a lot more television shows and things of that nature on YouTube and different things of that nature. But I think that there will be a time when this can be put at rest or abated, somewhat. I really do because I think the more knowledge that we have and the more experimentation we can do scientifically,
Mhm.
I believe that because I think it's a form of energy. It's an unknown form of energy that we don't know much about yet, and so it's that thing that's the unknown that it's a factor that probably a lot of people don't believe in it, but the people that do believe in it, I think, use a lot of the same kinds of things, like the what is that one box the I can't think of the name of
Spirit
it.
box?
Yeah, spirit box and different and the K2 meter and they do work. Those things do work. They can determine the presence of an entity, but I'm sure there's something that we don't know about yet. I just think that it just takes a lot of research and keeping good logs of what happens in certain times. But the attachment phenomena uh, is very scary and it can be very dangerous.
Yes. Okay. Well, that sounds that sounds great. And hopefully one day we will find an answer and maybe we can solve these cases and find a means to an end to solving these negative forces so that people can be at peace and
Yeah,
maybe
I
these
agree.
entities can be.
I think it's like
Yeah,
the Titanic. I've always had interest in the Titanic, the great sea
you
disaster
cut
that
out. Say again.
it reminds me a little bit of the Titanic. We talk about this kind of thing because it sank in 1912, and it took not until 1985 for someone actually found it, and everybody said, "Oh, you'll never find the Titanic," and then they found it.
Mhm.
So it's just a matter of time, I think, before we do find more technology that can combat these things. I think anything is possible. One thing I do know that this is energy. It's energy of an unknown nature, and I believe that the more we can inform ourselves about what these things do and what the modus operandi is in terms of a haunting and the types of people maybe that maybe it's determined by a type of person that it attracts. I think the more information we'll have to be able to fend it off more in the future. I'm hopeful of that.
That's great. Well, it's a pleasure having you on my podcast. And if people don't know, Barry's my boyfriend, and he's been documenting my case, my attachment entity case. And we've been looking and researching information on my case as well. And we are looking for answers. We're getting a little closer every time, and we're still doing a lot of research on my case as well. So it's a pleasure having you on my show, and stay tuned for more to come. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Melody. It was a pleasure.
It was a pleasure too. Thank you. And have a nice evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you.